one of the areas you talked about in the presentation was the whole notion of the visual theory. A number of participants were curious if you can maybe name an organization and discuss an entity that actually uses the visual theory or has used the visual theory very well during a period of crisis, just so we can visualize ourselves what that might look like.
Right. The one particular I believe excellent example of the use of visuals in a crisis situation was the use of visuals during the pandemic. Is that we know that people respond not just to information at a rational level and emotional level, but at a visual level as well. In a high-stress situation, all three parts of the brain become very active. We want information, for example, factual information that we can process with our frontal lobes. We want information that responds to our fears and our emotions, such as empathy, caring. But we also need visual information in order to reinforce the verbal information presented otherwise. And the importance of that is actually is a third, is that, and that's exactly what was done during the pandemic, is that a third of the messages were focused on the intellectual, rational processing, a third were focused on the emotional processing, and a third was focused on the visual part of the communication. I showed, for example, this morning in my lecture a picture of a woman sneezing and stop action, and it showed something that most people don't realize, which is when you sneeze, one of the recommendations in pandemic was cover your cough or sneeze. Sounds simple, but not quite so simple after all, because a sneeze has heavy particles that can land, but also light particles that can go as many as 50 feet away from you. So I started off by showing what a sneeze looks like, all the little particles, and then I show actually them floating toward the back of the room, which means that not just the person in the front of the room who gets infected by you, but people in the back of the room get infected as well. A second example from the pandemic, wash your hands. We found in our research that people had a very simplified notion of how to wash your hands. They thought you wash your hands during a pandemic by just putting your hands under the water, and now you've washed your hands. Well, it turns out that's not effective for the purpose of the pandemic. So therefore, we showed individuals, we had films of people washing their hands for a full 20 to 30 seconds, which requires you to sing songs like Happy Birthday or Yankee Doodle Dandy. Now you get in the auditory part of the communication. It's not just the verbal, it's not just the action, but also auditory. Happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me. And so you have that part of the visual experience. Use soap and water. Then we had a photograph of hand sanitizer that shows that if you don't have soap and water available and you can't wash for 20 to 30 seconds, you can still use an alcohol-based sanitizer. And we showed a bottle of sanitizer in the process. So throughout, for every message, we had 3 messages, 3 supporting facts, and 3 visuals that reinforced all of the verbal messages that we were sharing.
Thank you. Very visual, and that will leave an imprint with me.